Hello, everyone. My name is Erik Machuca. I'm part of the WDD 230 class of Brother Hayes, good old Brother Hayes. We're not worthy. And let me get Mr. Freeman out of the way. He's bopping and grooving. So I am going to be talking about the CSS model. That's going to be what we're going to be going over. So forgive me if this may be short, but it is kind of a basic concept of design. And as you can see, it's the CSS box model is going to be an actual term, box model, which is used for talking about design and layout. And as you guessed it, it is kind of obvious, but yeah, it is mainly an object of CSS that we can use within our coding. And so it's a box that will relate to wrapping around every single HTML text, HTML element that we'll use on our pages. It will consist of four parts of making up the whole box, which will be the content, the padding, the border, and margin. And so each of them can be used for manipulation. And I will go over that much more later. The content is going to be where we put all of our text and images all around inside the page. That's where it's all held. Then we have a padding, which is a transparent area around it. Have you ever noticed all those buttons you see on a website and you see that it looks very nice and neat in the middle? That's what they're going to be using. And a border is basically containing all of the content and padding inside, all around. The border will be just around that. And the margin will be also kind of like the padding, but it's a margin that's already outside the border as well, which is also transparent. So the margin and padding will both be transparent. Only the border could be the one that's mainly, visible. And you can change the color on that too. And next off, we actually can, well, yeah, wait, there's more. There's also parts of the box model that are specifically designed for saying specific types that you want to desire. If you just want to change one little side or grow some corners or cut them, you can see this. These are the phrases that we'll be using inside our CSS coding that will define exactly just where do you want to alter the CSS box model. So each of them, the margin, border, padding, except for the content, all of them have a top, bottom, left, right, and bottom. Excuse me, top, bottom, left, and right. I may have repeated myself. So, but yeah, it basically does repeat itself anyway, as there are many specifics to it, to your liking. And now something very interesting, we can come over here to an interesting calculation related to the model, to the box model. If we want to say this div element right here would be a total width of 350 pixels, you have to say it like this, with width and padding, border and margin, of course. But at a first glance, you might think that it's just adding up to 320 plus 10 and 5, 335. That is actually incorrect. For the interesting thing about that, it'll add up to it. That's why it would say 350, because with the width at the starting mark of 320 pixels, when you say padding, border, and margin, it will include the left and right. So necessarily, you don't have to be so specific unless you really want to be. You have to just, define in the CSS top, border top or padding bottom or margin left. You have to say that specifically. But if you just want to just have it in general, it is already done for you. So when you have just padding, just border or margin, it will just include the left and right. So when you say 10, it will say actually 20. And for same thing, border 5, it'll turn into 10, and so on and so forth. And I can do some examples for this presentation. You can go to W3 Schools. It is a pretty basic concept of CSS. I think is pretty interesting. These are from W3 Schools, these examples here to show some quick demonstrations. So this is how we would write it. In our HTML code right here, necessarily you can just put this in the CSS file. You don't really need to have style for it. And a cool fact, you can actually put on your web page in a div or any text or paragraph tags this type of coding, well, actually a type of writing, it is like Greek or Latin. I can't remember what it was called specifically, but this is like basically some placeholder text. That's what I would call it. And just to see how it would look. So yes, it may be gibberish, but yes, it also is useful for projecting how would the text look, especially when we're going to be using the CSS box model to see how it would be presented. So first and foremost, set the width to of the div to 200 pixels. It's basically just this. You would just have to come down here and just write width. That'll be the coding that we can use. Don't forget this, the semicolon. Write it out as 200 pixels. Necessarily, you can use pixels, or you can probably use EM, but I feel as a personal preference, pixels is just more accurate. So check the code. It ends up being correct. It'll end up doing something like that. And the hint would be obviously to use the width property. Each of these properties have their own names, and not too ironically, it's pretty straightforward. As I said, it's just its name. So using the width property would make sure that we altered the text to make it look very nice and neat for here. Then set the padding of the div to 25 pixels. This next example. So all you do is just add padding to it. Anyone who would want to say, can you add padding or add a border to it? It's like this. So arduous, but yep. So I have just given you, well, actually the W3 Schools has just taught us just now that neat little secret of putting the text right in the middle of a good looking box. Just like how you see buttons on a website, how I would just press the big old submit button and it's right smack in the middle of the box and it looks very nice. That was why. Not necessarily the width, you can put it as any width as you want, but you will also just use padding. Then, oh, hold on. Oh, I already done it, but yeah, yep. I could be a bit of a completionist. Now set the border of the div to 25 pixels, solid navy. We would just have to just add the solid navy to add color. And as you guessed it, just write border, not border. Border 25 pixels, add a space, and just type the name of the color. Check the code. Ta-da! And so we have a nice border around and we can give it some color. And then in the end, setting the margin to the div, it will just use this. Add our nice friend / neighbor, the margin, and just check the code. So as it shows, the margin will move the whole thing around with a little bit of spacing around it. And that's it. Very fun, simplistic, and easy to grasp. I hope you enjoyed this, and I thank you so much.